Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you being here today. We're looking forward to sharing this information on what we've experienced with COVID, long haul COVID over the last 2 years, and how it has really impacted our lives, how it's impacted our health, and what we can do about it. And I think that's what is the most positive thing, is that we really do know from the research and from being able to test millions of people, or lots of people, what we can do to help each person's body. Everybody's body is different. And so it always has a different way of expressing itself in what these symptoms are, but there is a root core. And so we find out what that is through muscle testing, energy medicine. So our goal is to bring healing to the chaos that's out there. And so that's our mission. I'm Jody Colgrove, and I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Stephen Daniel, which is the co-founder and CEO of Quantum Techniques. So Steve, want to introduce you?
Yeah, I'm the old Gomer that started all this a long time ago. And, you know, part of my journey is kind of a stubbornness. If I'm going to go through the pain of something, I want to learn everything I can, because I really think we can understand our issues out of existence. And I just like to be a faster learner sometimes.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And I've been doing a practitioner for 16 years, and I really enjoy helping people get clarity in their life, to be able to have energy back. And we just get so run down sometimes in life, and then have peace that you're knowing that you're going in the right direction, doing the right things to actually get your health back. And I think that just gives a sense of satisfaction and your empowerment back to be able to do that. So that's what we're here today. We do want to give a little bit of a disclaimer. We want to share these ideas and this helpfulness to as many people as possible. And so we want to make sure that we don't say things that will get us not being able to do that. So sometimes we have to use a little bit of a different language or put it in a more milder terms. And we do that to respect the different social media platforms, and also to respect people that these may be new ideas to them. So I just want you to be aware that we don't want to draw attention to us. We don't want to be shut down. And so we want to, when you submit questions, we'll try to answer them as much as we can. There may be times that we may have to get an email and answer it on the side in a different email, or talk to you directly, depending on what the situation is. So you're welcome to submit questions in the chat. I'll watch that. We also have an email at jody@quantumtechniques.com, and you can submit questions there if they're more of a personal nature or if they're sensitive. So we just kind of want to say that at the beginning. So let's get started. So I think the first question is, Steve and I were thinking about what we wanted to share. We wanted to ask, what or how do you know when you're dealing with long haul COVID? So Steve, what have you found in working with people about that?
I've probably, starting with COVID-19, I've treated about 350 COVID patients. And what I'm finding is, in varied degrees of severity, a significant portion of those people, maybe as high as 40–50%, end up with some post-COVID syndrome, or long-haul COVID, if we call it that. Now, I have a way to test for that. If people have studied Truth Techniques 1, that's where you learn, okay, the COVID virus, it's always a combination of virus and bacteria energetically, the way that we test. And you look for it in the body after COVID's over, and they don't show it. And then this is more advanced. I think this is in Truth Techniques 1, but I can't remember. It's been so many years since I created that. But then if you check and see, okay, is COVID involved in the cell surface receptors, then you find it is, usually in just the brain. That led us to something I'm just going to call the messaging scan, that COVID, in my belief, and there's a lot of evidence, is man-made. So is Lyme's. And with both of those, you'll have a long haul phenomena. Now, I've not seen that with dengue fever and herpes or other viruses, but these two man-made, I have seen that in black mold. And I've seen that with a lot of man-made things where you have a really bad reaction to a medication, or let's say a solvent. I don't have any proof of this, but my belief is this starts to change the epigenetics. Okay. So if you then, using our way, you clear this field. What are the messaging frequencies that somehow the body getting in contact with COVID created? Then you go back and you check for COVID, and it shows where there are hidden pockets of COVID. Now, when you clear those, I've not had somebody re-experience COVID symptoms, but sometimes you have to do that through various different organs and glands. So that's kind of the short version of it. And then people typically have reduced long haul symptoms as they do that. The thing I found with long haul is, the research is it often is respiratory, like a lingering cough, a suppressed immune system, in which when you go back and find the hidden pockets, it's always in the immune system, or brain fog, like cognitive issues, emotional issues. Now, those are the things that are known. Things that I've noticed is that often if you had a previous problematic chronic area that had inflammation, COVID makes it worse. Okay. If you had previous Crohn's disease, it's going to get worse. If you had previous arthritis, it's going to go to the joints. If you had previous headaches, they get worse. A couple other things that I have seen is that COVID has made many people EMF sensitive that they weren't EMF sensitive before. And I've seen people, and this includes me, lose foods that they could take before and lose supplements. A lot of times the supplements are antioxidants. Again, I don't have research on this, and so I'm just talking about what do I see in my practice. COVID does something to the histamine mast cell issue. So for example, I don't take a lot of supplements, but with long haul COVID, I lost every supplement I take that's an antioxidant that'll cause me pain. And they test bad if you test them against the symptom. It didn't make them energy toxin, but they test bad. If you erase their effect on histamines, they test okay. So I don't understand how that works, but COVID's really doing something that makes people, you look at histamine issues like itchy skin, bloating, pain, brain fog, all those can be histamine issues. And for the people that I've worked with so far, it tests the histamine issue, but antihistamines, whether that's, generic over the counter or whether that's like homeopathic, they don't test effective against this. So I'm not sure what the long-term solution is going to be for that. But I know a number of people that have had to stop taking antioxidants because their symptoms were so bad in terms of a histamine issue if they took them. So, I think we're in the early stages of this. There's not a lot that we know about this yet. Unfortunately, because it's been politicized, I don't know how open and free the exchange of information is going to be. So it might, truth eventually will come out and it heals, but we may not be getting as much information at this time as that will, I'll say, start to leak out over the next few months, maybe even years. So long haul COVID is inflammation. Again, traditional research, those three areas, but see, a lot of times if you're, as you know from quantum techniques, a lot of chronic issues are because of toxicity. Well, if you've been fine on a food or fine on supplements for years and all of a sudden they're bad, but they don't test bad normally, have to test them against histamines, now they're bad. I don't know what are the long-term effects if you can't take those antioxidants. So like for me, I can't take vitamin C, but eating foods that I can take, like oranges, black cherries, other things, limes that have vitamin C, those don't cause a problem. So I'm not sure what the mechanism is for that.
Yeah, and we kind of saying, what are those toxins that may be making the body do that? And at least what I've seen is that it really doesn't matter whether you've gotten, the jab or you have not. They both kind of show up in the body as kind of doing the same thing. Whether it was the virus you have, whether it's man-made, whether it's venom, whether it's, chemicals, heavy metals, toxins, all that is kind of like a soup, and everybody's body is different. It kind of depends on, which brand of the jab you had. So all of it kind of just indicates, that's why muscle testing is so nice, because we can find what is actually impacting your body. And like I said, a lot of times they show the long haul COVID shows up 4 to 6 weeks after you've had symptoms. Now, both me and Steve had COVID. I don't seem to have as extensive of long haul COVID, but I am showing one of my symptoms that I have had long going on has been, like weight gain or bloating, like you mentioned, Steve. And I hadn't thought about the bloating being a histamine reaction. And so those are things I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of do have that. It kind of, sometimes it creeps up. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, this is what I had, a while ago. So it's just kind of being aware to listen to your body and find out, what is it that it's symptoms may be trying to tell me. But it is the body reacting and creating an inflammation in the body from whatever it came in contact with in regards to COVID. Steve, going to why antioxidants are not testing well, I assume that one of the things that we find if foods go bad is because the salivary glands have gone bad. Have you found that if you work on that you can get foods back or antioxidants, or is it just kind of a different thing?
With going with the histamines and to go back, other than my age, I'm 68. I work at home. I'm extremely fit. I've never had a lung infection. My choice was not to get an unproven vax. And I had a mild case. I had Omicron in February, and the long haul didn't show up until April. I have not, understanding this histamine connection is pretty new. Like it's really kind of nailed in the last 2 weeks. And I don't know if that's maybe just a later stage as this develops. I have not been able to clear that effectively in most cases. Like if someone's bad on their vitamin D3, which is major antioxidant, but they need it. Clearing out of histamines, they typically, if they can do it, they have to do it on rotation. They can't do it every day. And even then, they may have a big histamine response, which whatever that is, bloating, pain. So in the way that we could normally clear things, and again, you can't always clear something the body says is toxic. Sometimes the body will clear it, sometimes it won't. Boy, I'm not seeing clearing something that's not really toxic, but it's creating this histamine explosion. So far, we haven't nailed that one yet. And that's what I'm saying. We just don't know where all that's going yet.
One thing that we have found since, I would say January of 2021, is that we did have an increase of autoimmunity that people were dealing with. And that was something that was worried about back in, I would say probably about April of 2020, is, hey, there's a chance that whatever's coming down the pike is going to cause an autoimmunity. And so that's something that as we work with quantum techniques, we can help the body recognize what's going on. And if you don't know what autoimmunity is, basically the body has a hard time seeing, let's say, what a heavy metal is when it's close to, let's say, tissue. And so it goes after both to get rid of it. And so your body starts attacking the tissue when it's what it's trying to do is attack the heavy metal that's there. So that's what autoimmunity is. That's a simple way of explaining it. And so the body just can't tell the difference. And so it wants to take care of both. So Steve, you've tested quite a few people with symptoms. And so you've talked a little bit about, brain fog, a little bit about depression that comes in, old symptoms. What are some of the symptoms that you have found that people have experienced? Because I think sometimes we go, well, I'm over here and I'm experiencing this. And whether a doctor says, well, I don't know what that is, take this, or whether they say it's on your head, or you don't even want to go see a doctor. You say, well, maybe it's just, and you're trying to figure something out. So I think it helps to know that, hey, these are symptoms that we've seen from a number of people that we have worked with.
Well, one of the things is, if I talk about the subset that I work with, and just as an example, I've never really had an EMF issue. And when I moved here 3 years ago, my house had a smart meter. I tested okay on it. After COVID, I'm not good on it. I had the meter pulled. Mm-hmm. So that's an example. I think the thing that people that are knowledgeable about what we do need to understand, that just because you've been okay with these foods, these supplements, this EMF for years, long haul COVID, you need to go back and retest all of those things differently. And you may find that you have to restrict your diet more or your supplements more until we figure this out. I don't know that I believe it. I don't have a reason to disbelieve it. I am very hopeful. But you Google long haul COVID and it says, well, we don't know what to do about it, but it goes away in 6 to 9 months. I am really hoping they're right. Like I said, mine came on in April. And let's see, it's, April, May, June, July. I'm in August. I'm 5 months into it. And, I have to work with that daily. So things that I have seen, increased joint pain, chronic sinus issues, reduced immunity in terms of catching other virus, bacteria. I know they talk about, the immunity is supposed to last, for whatever, 6 months, 3 months. I have people that have had Omicron 3 times in 3 months. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that I believe that getting one. I think the research shows that being vaccinated does not prevent you from getting COVID. Yes. Okay. It may or may not protect you against severe hospitalization if you have comorbidity. Let's put it that way. That's the research. Some of my clients that are having long haul have had vaccinations, some have not. That doesn't seem to make a difference. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, have I had anybody that showed long haul COVID that only got the vaccination and not COVID? No, not that it comes to mind. So I don't think the vaccination plays a part in terms of getting it or not. I don't think how severe the COVID is, but like one person that I've worked with, we were just getting them through, and they had a really, really rough journey of getting past the vaccination side effects, but they're a very complex case. They got COVID about the time we finished that up, and then almost immediately got long haul COVID. As we finished that and they were doing better, they got COVID a second time. Before we finished the long haul from the second COVID, they've been exposed, they've come down with COVID a third time. And so, like I say, I hope this journey ends for them, but biggest thing I've seen is a cough that lingers, sinus stuff that lingers, brain fog, memory issues, sequencing, anxiety, depression. I would say that's those cognitive issues, fatigue, that's number one. And if you just Google long haul COVID, you're going to find a number of people that they're so exhausted they can't work, so they're on disability. I know for me, it's nice that I work at home, and if I'm really tired, I can lay down and take a nap and get up and work more that day. But it would be hard if I was a face-to-face psychologist saying, okay, I'm scheduling 10 people a day, and knowing that I have the energy to make it through, because you're going to have good days and bad days. And that's the other thing. It's not like, oh, it's always the same. You might have one day where your brain's, working pretty good. You're pretty sharp. But the next day it may be, in the weeds, so to speak. I have seen a lot of skin itching with people that's not a common symptom. I've seen visual changes. What else? Like I say, if you've had a Crohn's or IBS, they're probably going to get a pretty bad flare. How much of that is just the actual bacteria, or how much of that is those tissues? Because our mucosal linings in our skin is where we produce so much of our histamines. How much of that is just a huge histamine explosion? They don't have a way to measure that. Let me check some of my notes. If you've had herpes before, very likely, because I don't know if it's something else or just the depressed immunity, you're going to have a herpes flare. If you've had shingles before, again, which is a herpes virus, you're going to have a shingles flare. I've seen people with Lyme's that has been latent and under control. Again, the Lyme symptoms come up. I would say those are the main things I've seen.
Yeah, I've seen hair falling out, no taste, no smell, brain fog.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've had, a little bit of weight gain, the bloating. You mentioned the joints, which was interesting. Yeah, so those are some of the things that I've seen. I've seen a lot of diaphragm issues. In other words, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but just the diaphragm seems to always come up and needing to be cleared or taken care of or dealt with. So the next question I have is, you have seen, and as we've talked, that there's 3 key areas that you notice where the body's kind of like struggling. So you want to share those with us?
You mean in terms of symptoms or the organs that we find?
Well, you had said that you typically find the respiratory, brain, and immune system.
Right. Yeah, and that's basically research. I mean, if you go on the internet and they say, what are the symptoms of long haul COVID? They're going to give you those 3 in that order.
Got it.
So like I said, that's that cough. Mm-hmm. Now, it's interesting, with all the people I've treated, if COVID did not go into the lungs, they had a very, they never got in trouble in terms of going to the hospital. Mm-hmm. Treated a lot of people early on that were in ICU and hospital that somebody just sent me the picture. Mm-hmm. And they did real well. I had, of all those, I had 2 cases that passed on. One was somebody been on a vent for 6 weeks that was in their 90s, a rabbi. Treat them the next day, they got off the vent, and then they had a heart attack. Mm-hmm. And so I had someone else that we did one treatment, they went to the hospital, and they had very compromised lung function for a long time, and they passed. Mm-hmm. So with Omicron, I've not had a single case of either variant of Omicron where it went into the lungs. Mm-hmm. So I would always look at keeping it out of the lungs is critical. The latest European version of Omicron often is in the gut. And that seems to hit people a little harder, almost like a gut flu, as well as some respiratory stuff. I would say that, and like I say, just once you drop the immune system, you start getting COVID over and over again, or catching every other virus or bacteria. And then the brain issues are big. Plus, again, any other old, latent infection like Lyme's, herpes, you're likely to get a flare of those.
Yeah, so like the respiratory, like I said, I found that the diaphragm is part of that. And, it's kind of interesting. I've done about 600 hours of watching different, videos, reading books, watching, webinars. And I'm always surprised at what we find clinically as we test people gets gets explained by sometimes the stuff I've read and watched. And it's like, wow, and so, if these are toxins, they're man-made. One of the things is they were trying to slow down the breathing or the heart because of it, being a venom or something like that. And it's just like, wow, yeah, I've actually seen that. And so, that's a possibility. And so, I mean, in some ways, I love what we do, that we just say, hey, what's your symptom? Let's take care of it. We don't have to name it. We don't have to, find exactly what it is unless it's really helpful. But that helps us just, solve the problem. Some of the things on the brain that we have found is cerebellum. That carries the chemical makeup of the body. And so that gets dinged a lot. Cell memory, in other words, just what your body's blueprint was when we were born gets kind of off kilter. And that's what you're talking about, the epigenetics. It changes it. One thing that we've just started kind of working on a little bit is the blood-brain barrier. And that's not only, obviously the gut lining, but the blood-brain barrier and how that is impacted.
Well, I know for me, when I cleared it with our new scan through the blood-brain barrier, and my old symptom, that's how I got into this years ago, was migraines. Mm-hmm. Well, after I cleared the blood-brain barrier and what was the problem, the way we do it with our new scans, I noticed within 2 hours a significant better memory and sequencing. Now, the next day I woke up with a migraine, which I rarely have anymore, mm-hmm. because it was just clearing out that stuff. So I had to clear it. But often what your symptoms are will tell you the target organ. I'm finding another area is the gut lining. Like when you think about leaky gut, okay, kind of like a compromised blood-brain barrier. If that's a problem, I think, and that's the one that one can cause a lot of detox. So I'm kind of trying to modify that in some way. But I think our gut creates most of our histamine. So I have high hopes that we're going to be able to work in that gut lining field, small intestine field, and find a way to mediate this histamine response. I'm not seeing anything on so far that I've seen on the research in terms of, oh yeah, this wipes out your histamines and mast cell activation. I'm really not. And again, maybe it's so new they don't have that much data, or they're not releasing it yet.
Mm-hmm. So, Steve, why don't you kind of give us just a little bit of an understanding of how we work with, a client to help, once we know what we're working with, okay, how we help them.
Well, it gets back to the very basics of QT, is that truth heals. Lies do not. So it doesn't matter what anybody says or what medication they say is going to work. If it doesn't work, then it's not truth. Okay, so the only thing that ever heals is truth. And so even if it doesn't fit your belief system, truth's your best friend. And I know, like when people ask me to test certain things, I'll say up front, I'm going to try to erase my bias against whether that's chemotherapy or vaccinations and test the truth as best I can. So what the body can see, it can heal. I don't know why, but long haul COVID means the body can't see the hidden pockets. And it's kind of interesting, before I had read the research, and in the way that I get new scans, I do a lot of study and prayer and information, I call it a download. I got the word messaging frequency. So something with this type of novel virus / man-made creates messaging frequencies. And that's where we started. And then you go back and you find where the COVID was hidden. The next thing within a month, they were talking about, oh yeah, with long haul COVID, you have hidden pockets of COVID. Well, that's what we're finding. So I guess the question that's unknown is, well, I know that as we clear the hidden pockets of COVID, people are progressing. And we may have to go through more than one. Okay, let's go to the cerebellum. What was hidden through that field? Cell memory, what was hidden through that field? And we test because we've got all this stuff. Where should we go? Okay, motor cortex. Okay, test through that field. Okay, blood-brain barrier. And each time it shows more and more specific areas where the COVID frequencies were hidden. The question I have is there something more we need to figure out, or is that going to, as the hidden pockets of COVID are cleared, does the histamine issue go away? Or is that an epigenetic change because of this virus, and we have to find another way to get to that? That's where I'm looking for information and doing a lot of searching, but I haven't found the answer for that yet.
And so both, I would say, biological and man-made things can change those different areas. In other words, they kind of can block what we see.
Well, and that really fits into Bruce Lipton's work, the biology of the belief, that we're born, 95% of us are born with good DNA, but something happens in the environment that then codes our body for disease. And that can be an emotional trauma, that can be mercury, asbestos, pesticides, herbicides, some pathogen, it can code for disease. That's what we call epigenetics. And that's my concern, is with this novel man-made creation. And the purpose of the vax was to change the DNA so that you could fight COVID. So we know that there was some kind of intention to change the DNA in a positive way. But we don't have a lot of long-term research to say, did it do anything else? I don't have an opinion. I just don't know. But I do know that I'd never thought about a long-haul field until COVID. Now I started, if there's long-haul COVID, what else is there? And I'm saying that's where I found the only non-man-made field. There's a lot of research that Lyme's escaped from the lab. So if we erase those two, black mold, and I've had latent Lyme's disease, I've had black mold, I've had dengue fever. So, I've had a lot of experiences to test against, but other than black mold, I've not found anything changing that DNA that wasn't man-made. So that's part of what, maybe that'll teach us how to undo other things. Because I know since I've done that, I've gone back and say, okay, somebody had a bad reaction to a medication. Are there messaging frequencies from that medication? Yes. Okay, how do we clear those? The same way we clear COVID, but it's a messaging frequency scan, and I've seen some pretty amazing things with that.
Yeah, when this kind of all started in 2020 and people were dealing with, okay, how is my immune system? I really found that anesthesia was really blocking people's immune systems and making it more susceptible. And so, I spent all of 2020 clearing everybody's anesthesia, and that was really helpful in keeping people, getting them healthy and helping them stay healthy and not get it. So it was very helpful.
I had someone that was sent to me by other health practitioners that I work with personally, and they work with me. And they said this person, they thought it must be psychological. And they're really astute people. And in the first session was only 31 minutes. I knew it wasn't psychological, but they had a lot of early surgeries. And they had unresolvable pain levels that nothing would help. Well, just an example, the purpose of anesthesia is to turn off inflammation of the body so it doesn't hurt so much. Just because you're not numb anymore doesn't mean it turns back on. And in that one session, we cleared anesthesia. They were 90% better in 3 days, just from clearing anesthesia. And for them, and that was before I was doing long haul. But if you go back, did the anesthesia create, if you have a bad reaction to something, it created some kind of long haul process. So not only do you need to clear the substance, if it was COVID or this anesthesia that caused it, but then look at what kind of messaging frequencies did it send out to the body. You clear all of that, then you'll go back and find a few more hidden pockets like the anesthesia, and then you kind of have a much more complete healing.
And you just now touched a little bit on the non-physical, and you know, the negative things in the world can make your immune system lower. And so, you know, it's being aware of what you're taking in and how much you're allowing in, and that's, you know, it's part of a practice, and it, you know, so it's some of the things that we found is, you know, obviously fear, you know, the media, you know, your belief in God, you know, and how do you turn that around is really trying to make a practice of living in gratitude, making sure that you connect with others. You know, I spent a lot of time working with clients that, because we were distancing from everybody, they were also kind of distancing from God, and we had to put that back, but that's still a safe place, and to go back and connect. And so it was really important.
Well, you know, Jody, another point on that is that pain is a given. Suffering is optional. Mm-hmm. What's the story you tell yourself about? Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm having horrendous pain and I don't know what it is, then I go to the emergency room. And I would say 90% of people that are not hit by a truck, they're bleeding out, so to speak, that end up in the emergency room, it's an anxiety issue because they don't know the truth about why are they hurting so much. Well, if I have pain and I can use what we teach in Truth Techniques 1, oh, it's not a brain tumor, okay? This is, I shouldn't have eaten that pizza, okay? Which I don't eat pizza because I get a migraine, okay? Or chocolate, well, I'm not gonna eat that either, okay? So now all of a sudden, well, wait a minute, I didn't eat anything different, but I got this headache that won't go away. And I learned how to, and that's why we're sharing this information. Is this a histamine reaction? Oh, yes. Okay. Is this some part of long haul COVID, a muscle test? Yes, okay. What do I need to change now? Because something that was not a histamine toxin is now a histamine toxin. Then I don't have to go to the emergency room. I'm not suffering because I may be in pain, but I'm no longer in terror. And I think that also goes back to the consciousness understanding that in my blunt, great philosophical way, I say sufficient therein is the shit of the day. I don't need to worry about whatever shit's gonna happen tomorrow. I got enough to deal with today. What's today I need to worry about? And don't project this current level of pain or suffering as if it's never going to end. Mm-hmm. And when I had a migraine for 7 years, that's what I was thinking. Now I realize everything ends, even a 7-year migraine, and that gives me great comfort when I'm struggling, you know.
Yeah, I've always loved your example that sometimes when we walk the dog and they poop, you pick up the poop and you're supposed to throw it away. You don't put it back in your pocket and look at it every day and go, ooh.
Right.
And we do that with our psyche.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's kind of the idea of, you know, making sure you're aware of the beliefs that you may have taken on during this time is the world's not safe. Suffering makes me special. Those are things that aren't going to serve you long term.
And I think the other thing is on a conscious level to understand that everything is time limited. You know, I get this brand new car. Wow, I'm so excited. Guess what? That's time limited. After I wash it for a year, it's just my car. When I get this terrible shoulder pain, you know what? I've had terrible pain throughout my life. You know, I've had kidney stones, broken bones, you know, shingles, migraines. I don't have them now. Everything is time limited. And that can be a great sense of comfort if you let it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are some physical things that you can do, which is doing exercise, you know, that makes the body stronger, nutrition, you know, stronger. We talked a little bit about supplements. You know, when COVID first came out, you know, we found that there were some universal supplements that are very helpful for people. And I still think that those are helpful unless you're having long haul COVID and you may have some issues. But, you know, we have a list of those that we can send you. And so if you want a list of those, you can send me an email at jody@quantumtechniques.com. You can also put it in the chat, send me the list of supplements that we have found universally to be helpful. We keep adding to it every time I get another, listen to another webinar, and I can test it on several people and know, yeah, this is kind of more universal. I try to do the ones that are, kind of almost tried and true and not just everything. And we always test all those supplements against that histamine response that we've been talking about, because that way we'll know whether they're going to be okay or not. And yeah, okay, so we have a couple questions, and that's kind of where we kind of reached our point where we want to ask some questions. So there's a question that came in and says, there's one theory that it depends on the batch you took about the vax that makes the difference. Also, whether it was which company it was. And I know that when I've tested the different companies, there's different components of what's in those. I do know I've tested that certain people that you see on TV have gotten different ones than the people I've tested. I just haven't had a very good control group, let's say, of these people got this and these people got that. But when I test different people, this one was, -10 of harm. This one was a -25 of harm. So there's definitely a difference. But we're also dealing with that person, and everybody's body is different and how they're going to accept it and co-abilities. And so yes, I mean, that is out there.
I would say for me, I don't have enough data to know how vaxxed or unvaxxed or which vax corresponds with a long haul COVID, if we stay with our topic. I would say across the board, when I was testing lots of people, the J&J tested, Johnson & Johnson tested least toxic over the other ones, just across the board, the amount of people I tested. And that was probably the least used vaccine also.
Someone else wrote, curious if it is creating a biofilm, perhaps like Lyme's.
I don't know that. I don't have an answer for that, but it wouldn't surprise me. And maybe if we go back to what we know, the messaging scan, which was a gift to understand this, shows where it's hidden. Maybe it's hidden under the biofilms. Maybe that's why it doesn't show. And like Lyme's shows hidden, the same thing with long haul, and maybe biofilm and hidden under messaging frequencies, it may be the same phenomena. I don't have enough knowledge to know about that.
Okay. Several people are asking for the supplement list. One thing that's hard with chat is that I don't have your email address. And so, if you're on my list already, then I usually have it. If not, you're going to have to email me your email or put it in the chat so that I have that. So however you want to get that to me, but I need that in order to send you the supplement list. And so Anne asked, what is a biofield or biofilm?
It's something created that hides things. I think that's the best way to say it. And usually it's created by a pathogen. That's why it definitely happens with Lyme's, other things. So maybe to use our same metaphor, it hides pockets of infection of a certain pathogen from the body's healing intelligence. So maybe, I had never thought about it that way. So I appreciate those questions. Maybe this is our way of getting under biofilms. Because I know there's supposed to be certain supplements. Can't remember all the supplement stuff, but that are supposed to dissolve biofilms. I find in general, if you do something energetically, it's gentler on the body than if you do it with a chemical or even a natural substance, because it then allows the body to release it, I'll say, in its own wisdom.
Someone is asking, said, I would like to hold up a code and ask if anyone has had help with it to clear a COVID field. Not expected. So I'm not sure if it's like a QT code or if it's sometimes we have universal codes that we use to help people, and that's one of the other things that I can send you is we have our COVID codes. We have depending on individual people, it depends on whether we have let's see, 5 or 6 of them that we have created that we have found would be very helpful. Sometimes you actually need the substance to take into your body to really fight it. But I think it helps with helping boost your immune system and keep you, as healthy as possible. And I've been saying the same codes for 2 years now, 2.5 years. So yeah, yes. So she says it is a QT specific code. So.
The one supplement that I've seen, which I really like, that's been helpful for COVID because it's an antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, is oregano oil. And, and I don't, on Amazon, I like a product that's time released, ADP, like Apple, David, Paul. And it's the company's Biotics Research. And I found that to be effective, very effective against all variants that I've worked with so far.
And I've found that too. It has just been kind of like my tried and true thing to go to for years. And I think last spring it spiked in price on Amazon and then it's gone back down now. So it's reasonable again. But yeah, it's one of the things I don't ever not have in my medicine cabinet. So going back to I think it's Sharon, I can't quite tell, just says SHR. Is that something you want to hold up and have us look at it? And maybe we want to go off mute and share with us the video.
Hi, yes, this is just a minute. We have a
Sure. Now I can see it, but I know that, yeah. Okay, so we're looking at that and we're trying to see, okay, about the residue. And so, Steve, if you can see that, you want to test that?
It's so small, I can't see what it is, but that does test helpful.
Okay. Would you like to know where I got it from?
Sure.
It's from the big list that I have, pages and pages of quantum technique lists, codes.
Okay.
And it's rattlesnake bite.
Okay.
Really?
Well, Jody has some thoughts about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. I just was going through the list. I put my fingers down. Will this help me? Will this help me? Will this help me? And it stopped at that. And it stops there over and over whenever I've been in a crowd of people, when I've been near somebody that's been jabbed, etc. It's serving me really well.
That's just infinite love and gratitude for sharing that, because it's just one of those things where it really helps us know why, and it helps us be able to point things in a different way. And that's a blind study. So yeah, I really appreciate that. That's great. But yeah, if the snake venom that they're finding from Dr. Ayers is that it does supposed to slow down the diaphragm and the heart rate so that the person that bit it can catch up with it and eat it. I mean, that's what snake venom is, slows down the whole system. So it kind of backs up what they've been saying. And so I've been kind of one of those things where I've kind of said, okay, I'm going to take this into my, I guess, bucket of ideas that I've learned and kind of see how much of it kind of pans out. And so, yeah, that's really great that you shared that. Appreciate it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and see, that gets back to sharing truth is truth is truth.
Mm-hmm.
It may come from an angle you weren't thinking of, but truth heals and lies don't. That's how simple it is. If the truth is this vaccination is going to keep you from getting it, great. I would love to see that. If that's not the truth, then we have to keep digging for a truth that works.
Mm-hmm. All right, so another question that came in is, could you briefly say what quantum healing is? Also, okay, so let me just see if there's another part of this. Okay, talk about they have digestive issues like colitis and insensitive to supplements and everything else.
So if you're asking me about quantum techniques, because there's a lot of different quantum touch, a lot of quote quantum healing. So if you're asking me about quantum techniques, again, what the body can see, it can heal, and its natural energy is toward healing. Now, our job is to find out what's blocking it from healing. On a physical level, a lot of times it's things in your diet, your environment, from toxic, living in mold, toxic laundry soap, bad foods, okay, hidden pathogens, virus, bacteria, old medication, anesthesia residues. Non-physical level, unhealed trauma, deeply held emotions like anger, rage, guilt, shame, they're not going to let you heal. So if you remove the things that are blocking healing, then healing naturally occurs. That would be all of it in a minute or less.
Sharon, if you could send me that code by email, I'd sure appreciate it. And it's jody@quantumtechniques.com. Thank you. So does anybody else have any questions they have? You can either, type them in the chat, or you can, raise your hand. Let me.
While that's coming in, I'll tell Sharon a short, funny story.
Okay.
When I was a youngster, my uncle in Texas taught me how to catch and milk rattlesnakes. That's what he did. So when I was about 12 years old, and again, understand the context, my mom was bipolar and schizophrenic. So I took me a forked stick. I lived in Arizona, went out and caught me a rattlesnake, put it in a pillowcase, came home into the kitchen. I shook the pillowcase and said, "Hey, Mom, listen." I wasn't allowed to take a pillowcase with me when I went out in the woods anymore after that. So I got this thing with rattlesnakes.
That's great. Does anybody have any questions that they have in kind of what, just any subject in regards to COVID, long haul COVID, quantum techniques, what we do? Looks like Anne has a question, so go ahead, you can unmute you.
Yeah, I just want to comment that I had the world's mildest case of Omicron, and I tested negative to one of those little home tests. And then an hour later, I had a session with Steve, and he said I had it. And I had, about a 4-hour nap. and then I felt over it. And then I tested as having long haul COVID. And it's not like I had big things. It was just, I was just a little draggier than usual. And yet I just want to express my appreciation that the sensitivity that Steve can put into testing really can highlight things that other ways don't even notice. And I have like 4 or 5 friends that I know have long COVID. I sent the announcement of this webinar to probably 25 people, because over and over I've had friends say, I'm not the same as I used to be. I'm not motivated anymore. I get sick easier. It's just ubiquitous. So I guess this kind of comes under sales pitch, because I really do feel that there's subtle things. Yeah. And I haven't even been tested on my supplements, so probably that would be helpful. I didn't realize the histamine connection was hitting supplements.
Yeah, that's really new. I mean, I only recognized that in the last 2 weeks. And, it's like people say, well, what do you think about the COVID testing? I say, I don't know much about it. I know that, you'll have somebody on the news that tests with COVID. The next day they don't have it. The next day they do have it. The next day they don't have it. I don't know the validity of that testing. I just know what I find. And it's kind of like I had a mild case of Omicron, a little tired, a little headachy, little scratchy throat. Well, those are the issues that I struggle with if I'm sick. Long haul COVID for myself and many people has been more of a struggle than actually having COVID.
Yeah, and for me personally, I had COVID, and then I had Omicron, and Omicron probably hit me a little bit more, where I had a fever and kind of felt just for a day. But I wouldn't say that I've lost any supplements myself, but I don't have a really big histamine reaction typically. But I do have a kind of a histamine reaction with weight gain, maybe say. So it may be hitting me a little bit that way, but I haven't lost any supplements that I'm aware of. So like I said, it's everybody's different, but it's like Tom's like, what Steve's saying is like, when we find a majority of people, we want to let you guys know, hey, this is kind of something we're seeing. So it helps us kind of understand that there's different symptoms for different people, but when we find a lot, then we like to share it.
Well, and I also think this is such a new and unwrapping thing that Jody and I want to do this once a month, and update this as well as other things. And so if you guys have questions, or like what Sharon, what about this code? Does this make any sense? Makes all the sense in the world. Go ahead and shoot them to Jody, and we'll make sure that we cover that, before our next Zoom call.
Another question came in. It says, can the corpus callosum be involved a lot? I tested over and over and need to take xanthan, XANAX more often for limbic system impairment. So much has to do with making benzodiazepine. And a big long word.
Well, let me say this. I think you can have very specific hidden pockets of COVID. And because, if you want to use a question somebody else asked, because it's hidden under a biofilm, if you don't ask a specific question, you don't find where it's hidden. So it's like pretty much, when I look at the first pathway to messaging frequencies for COVID, 99.9% of the time it's a cerebellum. You may only have 1 or 2. Other people may have 10 or 12. That's why we can't predict ahead of time. And, it's like not everybody has the blood-brain barrier scan because they're not having cognitive issues. But they might find that you have to go through the thymus and spleen because that's the affected organ. I think if somebody's having these histamine issues, of course, if you're becoming more sensitive to foods, then you're going to have to go through that, small intestine gut lining field. So it depends on where it gets stuck, what your symptoms are. And, hopefully we'll continue to learn more. And it's kind of interesting, 2 things that I'd never had before post-COVID. I don't itch. Now I've cleared that, but it was in a small intestine field. I was, at night, I'd scratch so much that I'd have, little scratches, little blood marks. My vision went so bad, and that was only in the mornings, that I went and had an eye exam. Oh, your eyes are fine. Okay, well, when my histamine's whacked, I can't see very well. I have to use stronger glasses. And then later in the day, when that clears, I can see. So I'm just saying, this is a wild ride of kind of crazy symptoms that you don't necessarily connect with this. Doesn't mean you're crazy. Well, you may be crazy. That's a different issue. But it means that just be open and I'll say investigating what this might be.
Eleanor is asking, it says, so where are you? Does someone need to see you in person? How do we go further with this? I'm having severe inflammation in my back, neck, and gut. and need to know more about this?
Well, we do everything we do is remote. Okay, I haven't seen a client face to face in over 20 years. So, and to be honest, it's easier. You know, I was a psychologist for since Moses practically, but when you're just reading a field and you're not concerned about even masking your facial expressions when you hear a story, what you had to do as a psychologist, you can actually just be locked into the field. So we do everything remotely. I mean, I lived in Hawaii for 15 years and worked with people all over the world. I actually have more clients in Europe than I do in Arizona. So we don't need a personal, we just need the history filled out. We have a picture of you to test off of. We get your voice, and all the information we need is contained in that.
And what we do is we work, once you've filled out a client session request and then filled out the history form, then we have a special that I do with the clients that work with me, which is working for 1 hour session for $300. And so we're able to help you kind of find out, hey, what's going on in the body? Why is it responding the way it is? What's involved? What do you need to not, take into your body or have near your body? And what do you need to add to your body? And so it answers a lot of questions. That's why I say we help you get clarity so you know what direction to start going into. So that's how you kind of get started. So you're welcome to send me an email at jody@quantechniques.com to start that process.
And let me add to that. I'm 68, so like I might have to have an elbow surgery from lots of abuse to my elbow and working. And okay, so in about 9 months, I can actually get in to see somebody, after all their testing. Well, usually you get your history in, and somebody in our group will be able to do a session with you within 24 to 48 hours. So if you send that to Jody, she'll get back to you and let you know she's got that information and be able to schedule something pretty quickly.
See, Jody says, Wyatt and I are about 3 weeks past COVID. We have very mild, and mine was a little stronger. I saw a lot of bacteria and really had to hit it hard. I had the intense itching on my legs. I thought it was an old stuff clearing. And my husband had that too, and he had it like in his elbow. And so it was interesting that that's what we kind of found, is that this is an old histamine reaction, because he acted once before that way. So, and he was also eating some moldy mayonnaise, and that doesn't help.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So the 3 things we wanted to say is that we can send you if you send me your email is, 1, a list of supplements that would be helpful that we've found to be kind of tried and true. And I can also, we also, from your research that you might have done on your own, we can test whether something is really helpful or not. So that's what we can do too. We can also send you the list of COVID codes that we've come up with that have been helpful to help with your immune system and help boost your body. There's also a lot of trauma with this. And so I wanted to share with you my trauma code. So if you're wanting the trauma code too, I can send that out to you. And like we said, we mentioned that there's we have a special working with first-time QT clients for $300. If you're just wanting to, if you've been with QT before and you're wanting to do a session to clear this, it's just our normal rates that we do, and there's no time frames. In other words, it could be 20 minutes, it could be 15 minutes, it could be 40 minutes. It kind of just depends on what your issue is and what we need to clear and what we need to find. Sometimes it gets a little bit longer if there's some emotional issues, but I don't know about you, Steve, but typically that's just a little bit of a component, and there hasn't been some really drawn off big things.
And I think it's also important to say, even with new clients, a lot of times you don't use that first hour completely. You save minutes for follow-up.
The ways that you can continue to connect with us, like Steve said, we are wanting to do kind of this long haul COVID, answer questions about it, next month also in September. And so we'll set that out. So look for a announcement about that. We would love to have your questions so that we can kind of help answer that ahead of time and kind of get prepared on what things you guys are interested in, because that's really important to us. You can learn more about our technique at quantumtechniques.com. And a lot of times people say, well, what's the name? Well, we're using quantum physics. We can go in space and time to find out what you're dealing with. And I a lot of times use the example of sleep. In other words, if you didn't sleep really good last night, we can go back in time and say, okay, when did you wake up? Okay, I woke up at 3. Okay, what was happening in your body at 3 to find out what the issue is going on? So we're using that space and time to find that. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channels. I have my own at Jody Colgrove at Quantum Techniques. We also have the company one, which we have a lot of videos on there for many years, and that's just Quantum Techniques. So that's a YouTube channel that you can look at to get lots of videos, so you can kind of see the depth and breadth of what we do. And it could be simple things to big things. So it's all there in between. I also have a Facebook group called Health Puzzle Academy, if you're on Facebook. And so I share a lot of health and healing things there, things that you might have not thought of, and also offer, the spiritual connection, because this is a walk, it is from the divine. And so that is part of the healing. So it's important that we include that. So again, you can send questions to Jody at quantumtechniques.com. and look for next month's Zoom. And let's see if there's no other questions. We just appreciate you coming today. We're gone a little bit over, but we wanted to get those questions answered. So we're just grateful and glad that we can help you get your health and happiness back and bring healing to chaos.
Well, you guys have a blessed time. Take care.
All right. Blessings, guys.